Hello, this is Don Ansell of WAAV, Wave Radio, Talk Radio in Wilmington, North Carolina. Do you or your organization have a process for practicing decision-making, collaborative thinking, and leadership skills in a safe, effective learning environment before having to execute these skills in real time? If you and your organization are looking for new ways of learning and applying the principles of high-performance teams and big-picture thinking, then let me invite you to listen to this interview with Robert D. Johnson, the author of a new book entitled A Touch of Reality. I want business people particularly to listen to this interview coming up with author Robert D. Johnson. He wrote a book called A Touch of Reality. And he's developed a method that helps all levels of managers, supervisors, and employees succeed with principles that apply to the effective operation of their business organization. If you want some hints on developing your business organization so that it kind of works well, listen to this interview. And it reminds me of a quote from Ben Franklin, who once said, "Experience is a very expensive university." He'll touch on that coming up in this half hour. I was quoting Ben Franklin this morning when referring to the new book by our guest, Robert D. Johnson. The book is called A Touch of Reality. And this quote from Ben Franklin says, "Experience is a very expensive university." Well, I was just talking off mic to Robert and said, I've been to that university, and that's one of the things that intrigued me about some of the things he's written in his new book. In business, experience can make all the difference between success or failure. Robert D. Johnson, our guest this morning, has developed a method that helps all levels of managers, supervisors, and employees succeed with principles that apply to the effective operation of their business organization. And he's our guest this morning, Robert D. Johnson, author of A Touch of Reality. Robert, good morning.
Good morning, Don.
Thanks for joining us so early this morning. A Touch of Reality. How did you come to write a book like this?
Well, it's really based on my experience of 25 years in management in the business world. And as I worked internationally, I began to discover that there's a real need to have organizations figure out how to learn, not from just experience, but how to look ahead and learn from their futures. And most of the time, if an organization learns from their experience, they feel pretty good about it. The only problem is that by the time they have the experience, it's too late to do anything about it, unless the same thing happens again.
Yeah.
So the book is a process that helps groups really begin to look ahead and figure out what does that future look like within our operation and the elements around us, and how do we now project and learn from that future so that we don't get caught by an experience that we're not prepared for.
In theater, you'd call it rehearsing, wouldn't you?
That's exactly right.
In a way.
Exactly right.
Because I have a theater background. But in sports, you'd call it practice.
We call it practice. That's right.
Right. Which is an interesting concept because it all involves what we're talking about, team dynamics.
Right.
And every business is a team. If they don't realize it, they need to.
That's correct. That's correct.
All right. So team dynamics, how do you develop a group of folks who work in the same place as a team?
Well, one of the first things that people realize when we look at various kinds of organizations, unlike sports teams and unlike theater, is that there's typically no process for practicing what they do. In sports and in theater, organizations and people spend more time practicing than they do performing. But in the business world, typically when a manager or a supervisor has to act, they act in real time. And so the concept of team dynamics really, as applied to the business world, it has been sort of a misnomer. When we look at many other texts, we talk about the old ideas of getting along together and, feeling better about yourselves and all of that. What we try and do is provide a process. It's actually a patented process for helping groups learn those skills and then helping them figure out how to apply those skills to those features. So the book describes a tabletop intervention where people can sit down in a safe, non-threatening environment, begin to practice those skills of collaborative thinking and discussion, and then move them forward in a way that they can convert those skills into a competitive advantage, preparing again for that future.
Mm-hmm. And so a manager, an entrepreneur reads your book, A Touch of Reality, And then how do they, there are so many what we call self-help books on the market.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes there's a problem translating what you read in a book to real life. How do folks take what they learn in this book, or what they find in this book, and translate it into their real life business experience?
Well, the book is written in pretty simple, down-to-earth kinds of terms. In fact, my experience as a manager was when I would pick up business books many times, the process would be so theoretical that it would be very difficult to make that transition. But in that process, we describe a phase where we call anticipatory learning, or learning from the future, which takes managers through a matrix step where they begin to, after they've developed those teaming skills, understand what that question is that they really want to answer. Who are the stakeholders? That is, who's going to be affected if we begin wrestling with these issues? And what are their goals? And what kind of options do they have? And then what kinds of scenarios might we need to be aware of as we begin to try and roll out those options? So it's really a 3 or 4 step process that's very easy to follow.
This is called A Touch of Reality. If you are a business entrepreneur, if you are anybody that has an interest in forming a real team dynamics in your organization, you might pick up a copy of A Touch of Reality. Robert D. Johnson, thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you, Don.
In addition to his book, Robert D. Johnson also presents seminars, workshops, and speeches using the concepts outlined in A Touch of Reality. If you're interested in learning more about the principles discussed in A Touch of Reality, or if you're interested in having one of his customized seminars on team dynamics or scenario planning presented to your organization, you may contact him at the offices of ICS Incorporated.